Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this webinar on COVID-19 crisis management, business continuity and resilience by the Institute of Risk Management Pakistan Regional Interest Group. I'm Sohab Mushtaq, your host for the webinar. I'm Head of Enterprise Risk Management at Mari Petroleum Company Limited and Group Chair IRM Pakistan. IRM Pakistan is one of the 17 regional groups of IRM UK. It was formally launched on March 10, 2020, incidentally just the day before COVID-19 was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization. And ever since then, the world has witnessed unprecedented changes. So how can we navigate through this crisis? How to manage and lead teams remotely in these challenging times when all of us are working from home? How can organizations develop and implement business continuity plans to make themselves shock-proof and more resilient? How can we emerge stronger from the crisis? These are the questions that we shall be focusing on today in today's webinar. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our panelists today. So first of all, we have with us Rahat Latif, who is a board member, IRM UK, and chair of Interest Group Committee. Rahat started his professional life as an aeronautical engineer before moving to Qatar in 2006 to lead the risk management team engaged in the design and construction of the biggest LNG project in the world at that time. Since then, Rahat has been actively involved in risk management and business continuity activities in his career. Rahat has been associated with IRM UK for the past many years. He set up and chaired the first Middle East regional group in 2007. Then we have with us Anna De Reyes, who is Group Director, Financial Control, VEON. Anna is a public accountant with over 25 years of experience with proven ability to work in diverse environments with a high cross-cultural awareness. She is currently the Group Financial Director of VEON, based headquarters in Amsterdam, and responsible for most of the finance organization, including risk management and internal controls. She leads a global team of professionals across the different geographies where VEON operates, and she is currently part of the crisis management task force created to combat the impact of COVID-19 on VEON. And last but not the least, we have with us Dr. Liaqat Amin Satti, Strategic Advisor and Deputy CEO, the Strategic Center for Consultancy and Technology. Dr. Liaqat's 28 years of experience in oil and gas industry encompasses more than 15 countries across the globe in the field of risk, resilience, safety, security, crisis management, and business continuity. He has also designed, developed, and implemented national risk and resilience programs for several countries and imparted crisis management training to high-profile individuals. He's a specialist in designing and conducting crisis management exercises and is a seasoned keynote speaker in international conferences on the topics of safety, crisis management, business continuity, and excellence of leadership. He's also a member of the advisory board for several educational institutions in Qatar, Africa, and Philippines. So thank you very much for joining in today and for being with us. Ladies and gentlemen, as per IRM COVID-19 Pandemic Global Risk Response Survey, 32% of organizations had not considered pandemic risk or anything similar before it happened. So this crisis surely is a test of leadership as well. And before I give the floor to Rahat, who will be speaking on leading through the crisis, let's have a quick poll. Can we have the question number 1, please? So you have the first poll question on your screens. It will remain there for 1 minute. What would be your biggest concern when dealing with your team during a crisis such as COVID-19? Is this the shareholders' profits? Is it operational delivery you should be concerned about? Or is it health and well-being of your team? Or is it growth of your business? So one special note, if you are trying to vote in full screen mode, you may have some problems. So if you can shift to window mode and then select an option, that will be easier for you. And with this, may I also add that you can find a chat box and a dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen. You can post in your questions and we can select questions and ask our learned speakers these questions. So what do you think should be the biggest concern when dealing with your team during a COVID-19 crisis? Shareholders' profits, operational delivery, it's a crisis because it is affecting humans. So is it the health and well-being of your team? Or do you still worry about growth of your business? So with this, let's move on to poll number 2, please. Can we have poll number 2? To what extent are your leaders communicating as often, as candidly, as clearly, and compassionately as you need them? Not doing it at all? Doing it something but could do more? Doing it quite a lot but too frequently? Or are they doing it quite a lot and you're pretty impressed? So select the option that you think relates to your organization. As we said, it is a test of leadership. And what do you think that your leaders are doing in this situation? They're not doing anything at all. I really doubt that there'll be any leader who won't be doing anything. Some companies are doing it somewhat, but do you think your leaders can do more? Do you think they're doing it a bit too much? Or do you think they're doing a lot and you're quite impressed? Okay, so we shall have a look at the poll results in a while, but meanwhile, I'll give the floor to Rahat, who will be talking about leading through a crisis. Over to you, Rahat.
Okay, thank you very much, Sohab. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, thank you very much for inviting me to talk at this event today. I know the Pakistan Regional Interest Group started very, very recently, so congratulations on holding an event of such importance. So you've asked me to talk about leading through a crisis and what are the characteristics of leadership that you need to manage through this. So let me start by moving to the next slide if I can. I believe I have control. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is just stepping back and thinking about the kind of situation we're in today. What does the COVID-19 situation present us with? And then talking a little bit about the kind of structure and people and teamwork and process that are called for to deal with this kind of situation. And of course, communication is something that I'll touch upon briefly, but Anna is going to talk more about that later on. So in terms of the current situation, what does COVID-19 present with us? As Sohab, you've already said, over 30% had not really considered pandemic risk and planning in the IRM survey. But that means, roughly 65 to 70% did, did consider it. The other thing that a lot of respondents said is that it's a significant disruption, and that's an understatement, of course. I would hazard a guess, though, that even though organizations and governments had considered the pandemic, I just wonder whether everybody really expected the scale of the impact that we're feeling today. And I think that's something that really differentiates this event. It's something that, when we do our business continuity exercises and our risk assessments, we consider an outage of one element of our organization, our operations. One thing goes down and we do everything else. Do we ever consider everything going down? And I think this is the key thing about this event, is that it's affecting everyone, your suppliers, your customers, your competitors, your industries, and society in general, and we're all in this together. The other key issue about this one is that it's difficult to see an end point. What is the end point of this? That's kind of blurry. On top of this, there's the added anxiety of personal safety. We all feel stress in terms of our own health and safety and those of our families and our colleagues, etc. So all of these things are quite impactful in a unique kind of way. And I would suggest that this kind of scenario wasn't really tested, with the exception of, I think, some of the countries in the Far East that have been through major epidemics. And I think with that exception, I think on the whole, it's taken the world by surprise. The good thing out of the survey came, one of the aspects that came from the survey was that risk managers are intimately involved in business continuity and in managing this crisis. So that's encouraging to see, that actually the value of risk is being, I think, demonstrated by the participation of risk managers. So going back to this situation, the COVID-19 situation, this is often called, a good way of describing this is a VUCA world. This was a term, VUCA was a term coined by the US Army in the 80s, and it stands for a world which is highly volatile. There's rapid change with large swings ups and down. There's a high degree of uncertainty. It's, as I said, it's difficult to predict what the next thing will be or when it's going to end. And there's prospects for surprise every day. It's complicated. There are so many interconnected issues. Where do we prioritize? Where do we put focus? And it's ambiguous. What is the cause? What is the effect? And how do we interpret what we're getting, the information we're getting? So it's highly stressful. It's an unusual situation, and quite often, I mean, I think traditional approaches of managing this in terms of managing risk, I think, are called into question. And again, our survey actually brought that out, and I include there a couple of quotes, and I'll repeat them both. Conventional risk management is not sufficient to assess such pandemic crisis risks. Understanding complexity and risk is essential. Specific plans and generic plans are all useless. What counts is trained, responsive, defined in management teams. I wouldn't say that they're entirely useless. I think the very experience of doing some form of exercise is always useful, even though you may not have gone through a specific scenario. The fact that you created teams and you did exercises and you built networks of risk management coordinators or business continuity coordinators, that's all useful. That all comes into play. But it still means that we're managing this in a slightly different way to traditional prescriptive identification, managing, mitigation of risks, things that are known. We're in a process of the unknown, and this calls for a different way of looking at things. And some of this is described in the next slide. There's got to be a process of adapting and experimenting, but in a disciplined way, to imagine new possibilities, being alert to external trends, leveraging the people around us, including our extended enterprise, our customers, our suppliers, getting their input. There has to be a need to reinvent, our business processes, and we've already been, we've seen that in terms of working from home, for example. We've reinvented the way that we're producing. Stakeholder involvement, diversity and collaboration. I mean, that's quite key. In order to imagine these new futures, imagine new options, scenarios, do the analysis, you need diversity of opinion in your teams. And of course, then all of this calls for a set of competencies that organizations need in their teams that are managing this crisis. So I'll touch upon that in the next slide. What does it mean in terms of structure and process and teams? So I think most of us, as I said earlier on, have got incident management teams in place. And what's really, I think, required here is a core team whose role really is about creating order out of chaos. I mean, if you think about it, it's a chaos situation. There's lots of unknowns. And so one of the key role is actually creating some kind of order in this chaotic environment, where this team is seeking to understand the emerging issues, facilitating decision making, delegating the analysis and the optioneering of solutions to specific sub teams, It's also, the core team is also the focal point for communications. And that's, I know Anna will touch upon that, but it's really key to have those communications coming from, one place that designs the communication appropriate to a specific point in time. There's probably also a need beyond the core team to look at a wider team involving a whole range of stakeholders. And you want to do that because you want to keep the core team fairly small, fairly agile, but you do want to involve a larger team which may involve other stakeholders. And that could include your customers, they can include your suppliers, they can include other stakeholders, your shareholders, for example, to get those, because we're all in this together. And it's in our interest for making this, for getting through this and making it work. I mentioned earlier on having sub-teams, and they're crucial for an analysis. The core team and the wider team has the overall perspective, but there's always a need for analysis in specific areas. And that's where you need sub-teams. And for example, there may be a sub-team looking at working from home, all of the issues about making sure that particular aspect works. There may be sub-teams looking at different shift patterns in operations, for example. So there are people that, you employ the SMEs, you employ in that to look at that and come up with solutions. And these teams can form and they can dissolve depending on the need at the time. So what this is calling for is a distributed kind of leadership rather than, purely command and control. You need to be able to empower and delegate different teams to be analyzing, assessing, coming up with solutions and innovative thinking. So leads me on nicely to the kind of people that are required, should be in these teams. People who understand, obviously, the organization, the customers, suppliers, and who are able to bring a diverse range of perspectives. So that means people from different parts of the organization, but also from different, from outside your organization as well. And again, as I said before, shareholders, customers, suppliers, people that can bring in a different perspective and help you to analyze and solution things through. You need SMEs with specific knowledge in this particular cases. I think it's absolutely essential to have people from a medical team as part of your core team, so that the understanding of epidemiology and caseloads, all of that is factored into our response and how we deal with our employees. The starting point for all of this is the core values that that are enshrined in the organization. What is it that we're protecting? What are our key pillars in the organization? And I imagine most of us, say in our mission and vision statements that we care about our workforce, we care of the health and safety of the workforce, we care about our customers, we have, we want to deliver according to objectives. So that is always, those values and pillars are always the starting point for any analysis and any objectives and any solutions that we come up with. It's important to have situation awareness, intelligence of what's happening. And especially in this case, because things are changing every day. So having that situation awareness in the team, people, having a radar outside and bringing in information. And as I said before, empowering exploration and ideas and innovation and finding solutions, that needs to be delegated and distributed. Importantly, people have got to feel safe to speak up. None of this works without people being, giving their ideas, exploring their ideas. So being psychologically feeling safe in order to speak up is absolutely key. And last but not least, self-care. This process wears people out, including the team and everybody else. So it's important to sit back. It's important to have backups and to take rest. That includes the crisis management team and everyone else. Which leads me on to the process. The key point I'm making here is that the leadership team needs to be directive about the process, but not necessarily about the solutions. Let the solutions come from the different teams that are analyzing them, consider them and adopt them, but be directive about the process. And the process is, there are different ways to think about the process, but typically you want to set goals, you want to assess the current situation, you want to explore the different scenarios, develop options, select an option, execute it, and then pause and learn from it and do it again. And this is probably an iterative process. These solutions are probably going to come through experimentation and iteratively. So it's important that we have diversity in the team, so that encourages creativity. And again, as I said, emphasize, safety in terms of speaking up, in terms of giving and exploring those ideas. In terms of communication, as I said, I think Anna's going to talk on this in a bit more detail, but I think key things I would want to leave you with are that, they should be honest and realistic. Communications should be honest and realistic. However, they should offer some hope. I don't say some hope, they should have offer cautious optimism. I know it's difficult to see, endpoints and where this is going to end and how, but I think without hope and without some optimism, human beings tend towards hopelessness, and that's not what we want in our employees and in our workforce. So there has to be cautious optimism. There has to be some rationalization towards hope, but being honest and being realistic about the current situation. How often should we communicate? When is it too little? When is it too late? Too much? When is it too late? That'll depend a lot on the phase of the crisis. The beginning of the crisis was a high energy, high hiatus, lots of things happening. We're in a kind of stable mode, but there's still new information coming along. So how much you communicate depends on the phase of the crisis. There may be specific incidents, for example, caseloads in your own organization that you want to communicate to the people around you. There's obviously changing work practices that you want to communicate. And of course, there's guidance that you want to give in terms of how to be productive, how to work from home, and that sort of thing. All of those are reasons to communicate. But I guess the key message that you're always testing when communicating is, do our employees trust what we say? I think whenever we do that, it's always important to ask that question: how trusting are our employees of what we're saying? And as I said, I'm sure Anna's going to bring some more light to this. I know we only have 10 minutes, so I want to conclude. So the VUCA world is daunting. There doesn't seem to be any end in sight. But it really is important to have discipline in terms of teams, process, and people to really bring order to this chaos. That means actually encouraging, the solutions will come from encouraging diversity, innovation, creativity in exploring solutions. People have to be safe to speak up, keep communicating. And it's great to see from our survey, from the IRM survey, that risk managers are playing a key part, and they will do in the future. And again, there's some quotations from the survey. I'll read one of them. It is no longer just about risk management. There is a direct link between resilience, and in the future, it will be enterprise risk and resilient management. So there you go. There's a bright future for risk managers, I surely believe, but we have to get through this crisis first, and I'm sure we'll do it all together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rahat, for your insights. And Rahat talked about leaders leading from the front and leading and not managing, and that how important it is to strike that balance of communicating too little or too much, or being realistic, but at the same time being hopeful. And I really like the acronym that the survey quote mentioned, that instead of ERM, it's now like ERRM, so enterprise risk and resilience management. Thank you very much, Rahat. And we had 2 poll questions, so can we have a look at the poll results, please? Okay, so about your biggest concern when dealing with your team during a crisis as COVID-19, 82% people said it's the health and well-being of your team. And that is so true, because it's your people who are your true assets. And if your people are fine, your business is going to recover and be fine. Operational delivery comes on number 2, which is 12%. Shareholders' profits is at the very end, which is 2%, and growth of business is 4%. So a vast majority of people have voted that health and well-being of team is the most important. And no doubt that's why it's a crisis, because crisis affects human beings, and that is why their health and well-being is very important. Can we have the poll results for the next question, please? Okay, so to what extent are your leaders communicating as often, as candidly, as clearly and compassionately as you need them? And 55% of people are saying that leaders are doing a great job, and teams are very impressed. Whereas 28% people also think that they're doing it a bit too frequently. So that's what Rahat referred to, doing too little or doing too much. Only 1% has said not doing it at all. Well, that's really an eye-opener for those kind of leaders. And then 16% say doing it somewhat, but could do more. So a vast majority of people have expressed that they're impressed that their leaders are doing a lot. That's a really good sign for sure. And we have time for a couple of quick questions. Do we have a question from the audience?
We do. We have a question, Rahat Sahab, and that is that what are the top qualities that employees need from their leaders during crisis situations like right now?
What are which qualities? The core qualities. Is that what you said?
Yes,
yeah,
the top qualities, the core qualities.
Yeah, I think some of that I elaborated in my talk, and I mean I think first and foremost is I think the health and well-being of staff, of their workforce, and I think without a healthy workforce, really there's no continuity beyond this. So you need a healthy workforce. We can only have good health, and then we can move on from here. So I think that's the core quality that I'll be looking for, and I'm glad to see that in the poll, most people felt that this was this was important, and this is what companies are doing. I think obviously there needs to be a sense of inclusion. So though people are working from home today, it is important to stay in touch and to stay in contact with staff. So I think that's quite key. People can feel easily feel disconnected in this environment from what's going around, and then if this process goes on for a long time, then going to work will feel difficult. So staying connected to the workforce, having that connection with and caring about people's health and well-being, I think that's quite important. As well as, of course, keeping the business, survival of the business. I mean, I think that goes without saying that we should expect our core team to be looking after the business, because if there's no business, we've got nothing to go back to. So I think those are I would say those are kind of key issues, that key core qualities of it.
And as you, Rahat, mentioned earlier, that trust is one such characteristic that needs to be there. So employees should be able to trust their leadership, and the leaders should show compassion. So with this, we'll move ahead to the second part of our webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 has drastically changed the way we work almost overnight. While it is an enormous opportunity to experiment something which we haven't, it also comes along with its challenges. So before I request Anna, who's going to talk about how to lead and manage teams remotely in these challenging times, let's take another quick poll. So can we have the poll question, please? Okay. So this is something that everybody can relate to. Describe your feeling right now while working from home. So please select one. I love the autonomy and flexibility. I find the technology frustrating. Well, that happens at times. It gives me time to concentrate and think. You can do self-reflection. I miss social interaction. And the last one also happens. I keep getting distracted by my family. So once again, I have the same request to make, that please try to be in the window mode to select your poll question. Also, you'll have a dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen. You can post questions. This question will remain there on your screen for a minute. How are you feeling right now while working from home? Are you loving it? Are you finding it frustrating? Has it given you time for self-reflection? Are you missing your social interaction with your coworkers? Or do you keep getting distracted by your family? Okay, so we shall have the poll results in a while and we'll talk about them with Anna as well, but I'll hand it over to you, Anna. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Sohab, for your invitation, first of all, and for all of you who are actually joining us today. It is my privilege to be able to share with you some of my experience of working with different functions within the finance, but also across different geographies. So thank you, and I will share some of this experience with you, but before starting with that, what I would like to do is to give you some context in terms of what does it mean actually working now on COVID-19, what has happened for us. And that starts with the fact that risk management as a function, it became suddenly extremely more important than before, and had more emphasis across the organization. And as a second one that we have here as well is the fact that we always have succession plan for the top 100, and we were aware of possibilities of these employees either leaving the company or staying with us, but we didn't really do it through the different employees, let's say that. The other area that I think is important to consider is, I think there is problems, apologies, with the presentation.
We do all find it frustrating at times, the technology thing.
That's okay. So we'll just try it again.
Yes, there you go. Maybe the organizer can take control of the slides.
We can, I think it's working now. So the last thing that I wanted just to say that is important to consider when you're working with different team members is that each geography has his unique own considerations. So when you're working, like I do right now, I work from Amsterdam in the Netherlands, but I do have teams all across, including Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Russia, so different geographies and cultures. You cannot necessarily have a formula that will work for all of your team members. So it's always very important to consider that when you are doing your plans. So when we started this, the beginning of the COVID-19, what we did pay a lot of attention is the early signs that we had. And the first thing we did, actually Rahat already mentioned, which is extremely important, is we set up a task force here at headquarters. But and the main reason for that is to have, number one, that it's going to be cross-functional. So we understand how we're going to be reacting to the complexity of the situation that was coming ahead of us. Number two, what it was important is to have different areas of expertise that we could utilize and not only think from a finance perspective or from operation perspective, but a holistic perspective. And the other thing that we did, which was very successful for us, is have a scenario, testing a scenario workshop with the top leaders and stakeholders, including the task force, which actually allow us to understand, but first of all, create sense of urgency of the situation that was ahead of us. And during this workshop that we had, and we actually explored the different scenarios of business plan, like, okay, now it's business as usual, but we need to have a response, and at certain point, we will start recovering and we go into a new normal. That, what emphasized that workshop more than anything is employee well-being, and that employees are the biggest asset we have as an organization, and is the one that we need to actually take care more than everything else, because without them we cannot do anything. So that was number one area of understanding, but as well communication. The fact that it will create, and Rahat nicely actually touched on these areas, and now I'm just giving you the perspective of as a company that yes, we thought about the fact that people will feel some anxious, or they will definitely need different needs, because the kids were at, they're not at school anymore, everyone is at home, etc., etc. But as well, that per geography, each geography I just mentioned, they have different timelines for the lockdown or different way of responding towards that. And as a business, of course, each operating unit have their own business plans, their own activities. But what we have done as a risk management function as well is to assess the preparedness to react towards that crisis that was coming ahead. This is just an example of what we have done. Is it's an assessment, and it was not necessarily to be too complex. It was mainly to have a meaningful dialogue with the stakeholder and top management on the similar manners, on the similar areas. So that will allow us to understand, and also for them to think, you know what, this is important. And what you see here in this model that we actually utilize is that it doesn't only focus on the typical things that you will expect for any business, in our case, the telecom business. It's not only the supply chain, what will impact the supply chain, or what about the brand protection, our customers, our face customer activities, but what you can see here, which for us was very important, is the talent in the workforce, and most importantly, the employee health and well-being. And when we were doing this exercise, what it was definitely important for all the different operating units is, number one, we need to ensure that we empower our employees. And for that, what it meant is, obviously everyone did a little bit differently, but what it was, indeed, as Rahat mentioned, we already have business plans. We already had, this type of formalistic list of who's doing what is critical, what is not critical. But then we took that and looked at it from a different perspective, which was, what about if you're not here, who will be your co-leader? Or if, what is the dependency we have? So we put a lot of emphasis on the people, but also cross-functional. And that actually allow, again, more communication and understanding of each other's situation. And that's indeed what it slowly start building trust within the teams. And they're also speaking up more to say, well, if this happens, I might not be able to react, so somebody else needs to take care of this. So that was actually very powerful for us. The other area that now I would like to say is, now we are in a situation of a new normal. So this is where we are. You got your teams working from home remotely, and we're no longer at the office, and we don't know if we actually are going to go back to the office, and when, how, and which will be the new situation. So what the key principle that for me was very important is to provide flexibility. And what does it mean, flexibility? And for me was, especially talking to my teams, is, well, everyone, we need to be more flexible with the hours. So we're no longer at the office. We cannot start from 9 to 5 or from 9 to 6, but everyone will need to adapt to a different situation. And let's not focus on the number of hours, but let's focus on your output, on your results, which you can actually deliver as a team in any case, or as an individual, which will obviously include and be part of the greater picture. And in order to be able to do that, it sounds simple, the word that actually Rahat also touched based on it already is building the trust that your team needs to speak up, to be able to explain, you know what, I'm busy during this period of time, I have the kids at home, or my husband or my partner kept working and I'm alone because he works either, in these banks or very specific businesses they never close, or a hospital, let's call it like that. So agreeing on a specific golden rules that we set as a team, that, it's agreeing every week, this is gonna be our outputs, our objectives, and I'm not going to be able to work this day or this time. Having that open and honest conversations are extremely important going forward, because they existed before, but now they need to be more frequently. And in order to do that, besides the activities that we already had today, the other area we start having is creating specific check-in points, let me call it like that, where we are not anymore working at the office, so let's have virtual coffee breaks. So that's something that I ensure to start creating with the teams, and also my leadership team also start doing the step with their teams. Stay connected is very important. So not only focus on let's have team meetings and discuss our week, etc., but also let's discuss fun factors, the human factor. How are you coping with this activity? How are you feeling? And have these conversations. And these short breaks are only focusing on the personal side. And at the same time, when you have a global team and you have different meetings happening at the same time, but I also thought, well, we're missing the fun and actually missing the possibility to exchange jokes or talk about certain things. And for that purposes, I also created this, we call it happy hour every Friday. And it's 45 minutes where we allocate this happy hour to say, let's have some fun. And of course, to have dialogues with the teams and have meaningful conversations. But as you know, it's not so easy when you have a team of 20 or 25 people joining at the same time and talking to each other. It becomes quite difficult. So I thought about it and I said, you know what, let's do some team challenges. And with that also, when I invite them for the first time and say, well, now we're going to explore your creativity side and your other inner you that you have. So share with us a picture, and I just share here a few of them, but of course, you can do as many as other things you want. A picture, what does it mean for you being in lockdown situation? Can you create a TikTok video or a picture, and everyone then send it, and we, during that 45 minutes, share the videos, have some fun, laugh, and that makes it very, interactive for the teams, and they definitely continue to be very engaged between each other. And of course, as I told them, this is not only, my initiative is for you as well. So give me ideas. What else you would like to do? So we have a voting session with everyone suggested new themes. And based on that list that we all put together, every week we do different things, from playing bingo, from making pictures of dreaming on how the lockdown will look like afterwards. What is the first thing I want to do? And that has been definitely something that has kept the team very engaged and connected in a very simplistic way. And as you can see, it's not necessarily super difficult. And being conscious of time, the other thing that I actually want to share with you is, of course, different tools for communicating. We had already built some practices before COVID-19, which actually enable us just to continue and capitalize on these tools. For instance, because I do have teams, as I mentioned, across the different geographies, we already have a monthly call where we discuss, what are the strategy that we have ahead, what are the key priorities, what were the successes, and now we continue with those as well, having bi-weekly calls when we just touch base specifically with our teams in Pakistan or with our teams in Uzbekistan, but as well enable us to have that connection closer now and utilizing that more frequently. One thing that is extremely important, of course, is to have a platform that will allow you to share all the information. For us, we utilize SharePoint in Microsoft, and we utilize Blue Jeans to have video calls and also share presentations. We already had that practice, as I mentioned, and we just capitalizing on it, and it's extremely useful. The other thing we created as well is WhatsApp groups. It sounds simple, but also by creating it, to create specific rules, right? To say, don't send silly things, but just have good conversations, etc., etc. And of course, what we ensure to do every other month is to have a session of sharing the knowledge. So if we have similar risks across organization, how are you coping with that risk? How are you doing this? And we ensure to have that dialogue between the teams. So these are some of the ideas that we are actually utilizing and creating even more. And that's something that I just wanted to share with you as a potential idea.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna, for sharing your best practices. And before we move on to the next topic, if we can have a look at the poll results, please. Okay, so this is interesting. So your feelings right now while working from home. So most of the people are saying they miss social interaction. That's true for sure. And we hope we get back to the situation when we can see our co-workers and have those social interactions. Then it is followed by the option, I love the autonomy and flexibility. Then we have 12% people who are saying, I keep getting distracted by my family. And then only 8% are saying, I find the technology frustrating. Which is pretty cool, and that means we're all getting used to it, even those people who weren't used to this. But I would say, as far as I love the autonomy and flexibility, as Anna mentioned, that the number of hours put in should not matter. It should be the result that matters, and we should be open to giving our people that sense of autonomy, that sense of being trusted. Which is all the more important in these situations. With this, let's move on to the next topic, which is strategies for resilience and business continuity. So ladies and gentlemen, another very important thing that COVID-19 has made us realize is that disruptive events can present themselves out of nowhere and can undermine our plans. And we now have a better appreciation of business continuity plans and different preparedness measures like pandemic plans. So before I give the floor to Dr. Liaqat, let's have a quick look at our next poll question. So can we have the next poll question, please? Okay, interesting question. How well prepared was your company for the current pandemic? So your options are, was it well prepared? Did you have good contingency plans already in place? Or did your company have some contingency plans in place, but they were very limited in scope? Or do you work for one of those organizations which didn't have any plans at all? There was no planning for a possible pandemic, or you don't know. I think that's the option for people who are freelancers and don't work for companies. But for sure, pandemics are the kind of risk which are very low likelihood. And as Rahat said, that even the companies that had thought about it probably didn't do much about it. So these are your 4 questions. We have around 117 attendees online at the moment. So we're waiting for you to answer the poll question. Was your company well prepared? Did you have some contingency plans in place? Not at all, or you don't know? So we have another poll question for the same topic. Can we have the next poll question, please? Okay, so how resilient has been your organization been through the current pandemic? So whenever you talk about business continuity, you talk about the organization being resilient. So please select one, very resilient, operations working efficiently, or just okay, you're coping fine, that's the middle answer, or not resilient at all, operations severely impacted, or do you think it is too soon to say? So I honestly think this varies from sector to sector and organizations to organizations. Like, for example, hospitals, they have such plans and they're very resilient in such situations. Whereas if you look at the airline industries, we all know how they're doing right now, and probably most of the airlines will be needing government support to resume their operations and to be on track. So these are your options. They definitely vary from organization to organization. So which organization is yours? Is it very resilient? Is it just doing okay? Or is it not resilient at all? It needs to work on its resilience. Or do you think it's too soon to say? So with this, we'll have a look at the poll results in a while, and Dr. Liaqat has been listening to everyone very patiently. Thank you very much, sir, for this, and the floor is all yours. Business continuity and resilience.
So thank you so much for the invitation, and I will also like to thank Rahat for pushing me to definitely do this. I've been fortunate to be into the oil and gas industry and into risk and resilience business from last 30 years. And I have seen in 90s, the most focus was on response and recovery. Then we moved into 2000, and in that almost 10 years, the people were talking about IT disaster recovery. And then we realized that these things are not enough. We need to have a bigger umbrella or bigger approach that calls resilience. And that's how the resilience standard came out in 2012. And then we started following that. I've spoken about the risk and resilience are integrating crisis management, business continuity to become a resilience in 2007 in World Petroleum Conference in Spain. And it was so refreshing that after some time a standard came out, ISO 22301, that actually guides us to how to do this. So it's kind of a structured methodology that if you follow that, you will be very close to the basic and principles are right, and then you can manage this. But as one of the senator, I think his name is Rumsfeld, he once said that there are things that we know and we can actually prepare for that, and there are things that we don't know and still we can do something about that, and there are things that we don't know what we don't know. And this current situation came very close to in that frame. So it will be very difficult to always make the plans or list down the scenarios and only work with those. And listing down those scenarios are good because these are important. You know that what are the things those can go wrong, and you can actually put the prevention, mitigation, response, recovery strategies into it. But into my practice from last 20 years, we have emphasized on one of the important scenario that we need to cover in our resilience planning, that plan for an unknown scenario. An unknown scenario are the impact of the corona is maybe could be predicted, and maybe to the extent that it has gone now, and I don't know where it's going to end, that might not be predicted in every plan. But you need to have the people, you need to have an organization, you need to have a system and the framework written in a way that should cover each and everything, and your people should be trained time and again so they can actually face this situation, bring right people, techniques, and the right expertise and resources together to make the right decisions. So this is the only way that you can actually deal with any new or any kind of scenario that cannot be covered or which is unknown. So on the current slide, it shows that once you are going to plan for it, you need to actually look at all our entire value chain where you are connecting. You're based on technology. Maybe you're working with the vendors and suppliers. Those are need to ship things from outside. So you need to look at the cyberspace, air, maritime, and all your land and borders as well. And then only you can actually come to the right conclusion. So it's always important to follow a guideline or a standard. And we have recently completed the risk and resilience program for one of the country, and it is implemented, and it was so refreshing to see that all the decision and all the actions were taken as per the plan, and wherever the plan was not quite clear, they have taken the decisions within the crisis management team or within the risk and resilience team. That was the right decision for that right time. So into the guidelines, we have looked at the standards, we looked at the NFPA, we have looked at many other international best practices. I have traveled to UK, US, Japan, Australia, Singapore, to look at their national risk and resilience program and see that what is the best, what is the standard covers each and everything. So we came to know that there are standard practices. Those will teach you how to do the risk assessment, how to manage them, recovery, prevention, mitigation, crisis management team, business continuity. But one thing was quite missing that I have seen everywhere, that the competency assurance program or the plan was not the part of the overall risk and resilience program or continuity plan or crisis management plan. This means that you need to identify all those critical people and processes those are going to work in case of an emergency or crisis or disaster, and give them the right level of the training. Now, crisis management director at the strategic level will have a different set of training and set of qualification or competencies than the middle management or the technical people or operational people. And once we have developed that and it was implemented, it was so good that a lot of time, if the development of the standard and policies and program and the framework have taken maybe 1 to 2 years, the training actually took longer than that. And that is the real essence, that you embed the risk assessment or crisis management or business continuity into the organization. So without training, and some of the trainings need to be time and again, that it must go into the muscle memory of the people. So that's how you can make sure, and it depends, as Anna said, into the geography. Some cultures are different than others. Some are taking these things very seriously, others are maybe not. Some of the countries might not be able to invest this much. So a right balance need to see, the practitioner need to find actually the right balance and give the right advice to the management or to the organizations. So once you're going to list everything, I'm not going to take all of these point by point and tell you, but there was one thing that you need to prepare for these scenarios, that an unknown scenario. And imagine that a situation where you don't know what you don't know. In that case, what kind of people are there to make the right decision? What kind of facilities and communication system or resources you need to have? So at the country level, it comes quite maybe handy, but at the organization level, to imagine this and put this in place and practice it. If you don't practice it, it will always be a very big issue at the time of the crisis, because the people get under pressure. Management have different pressure, middle management have got different priorities. So it needs to be practiced, and it needs to be practiced with the team time and again. So then only they will understand it, and they will be able to make the right decisions. So once you do your impact analysis, you do the scenario plannings, then of course you are going to identify all the critical function and processes. And then ideally you will have a backup of all the critical function and processes, but maybe not the same. Like I'm sitting in a building which is 33 stories building, and in case of a backup, we can't have 33-story building just only standing by for this. So it need to be cost effective, it need to be financially viable, and it should, then you need to identify that how many critical staff that you need to to have in first day, second day, third day. Same thing for the people, same thing for your supplies, technology, and other equipment and resources. This is a standard slide that the standard guides you to do the risk assessment, prevention, mitigation. So the first thing, if you have a risk, you need to prevent it. If you cannot prevent it, then you do the mitigation, and if not, then you need to be prepared for it. And then you need to have these early warning systems and indications and that differs from industry to industry. Oil and gas industry is very sensitive. They got high risk, and in some of the cases they can't afford to lose a second. So that's why quite stringent procedure, policies, and practices need to be there. So these are the stages that you go into to face a disaster crisis, and then move into damage assessment, involve your business continuity and resilience plan. And it's the peacetime that you need to prepare all this. So it won't be possible. You will have no or very little time to do anything during crisis. So the plans need to be in place well before these happen. Also, you need to have a proper command structure, because sometime to my experience, if you do not have a right command structure which is accepted, tested, proven, and recognized by the top leadership, then you will always have a chaotic situation, because the people would like to be hero, or some people would like to hide, and some people would like to run away from the situation. So the proper responsibilities at the lower level or middle level or the strategic level are very, very important. Now, since we have a little time, I want to give you one of the experience that we have, and one of the good thing happened for us, that we have combined our response, crisis management, and business continuity into a major risk and resilience program, our management system we call it, and then we have created a software. The software is not a complicated thing. Anybody who have dealt with the risk and resilience program, is easy for them to understand, and also easy for the teams to understand. And this is quite consistently you can manage on your global sites or international sites, or if you have many other sites, or even within the organization. If a simple BIA sheet, an Excel sheet, you give to 4 people, and the results are going to be not the same. So it's because of the assessment, because of your own risk perception and exposures. So this system was quite helpful for us for a couple of countries that I was responsible to put the risk and resilience program. So all the ministries and the subsectors and the critical infrastructure organization are related to all the essential commodities like food, medicine, and other things. Were quite well managed and controlled, and time was also minimized. If you just only send emails and try to collect the data, and then try to make sense out of it and put into the proper formats, it takes a lot of time. But this software, and I'm not selling this software, but I'm just only telling you that any kind of software will help you to keep the consistency, and also it will help you to review, revise, update timely, and it will help a lot for everything. We have few other ones. Those are not very important. One of these things that I can share with some of you, which is the organizational resilience and readiness survey. This is kind of a web survey or a kind of software that if you go through the set of question and honestly respond with that to from operational, tactical, and the strategic level, you will be able to see the dashboard that how well is your organization prepared, or what are the areas that you need to focus in future. And that goes to the training. Most of the training we have done training need analysis, and then you need to actually take those into different level of maturity. So people need to have a little, starting with orientation, then giving them more complex and focused scenarios and training, and then you test them, put them into the difficult situation. Well, some of the exercises that I have conducted and run or organized were even 1 week long, and there were, and that's where you really practice that how the backup system is working, and how these people are having the same level of understanding as your primary team. Or secondary team need more help and strengthening. How many people you actually need? If you have the longer scenario for months and days, then you need to plan it properly. So
Dr. Liaqat, taking a note from your survey, that just reminds me we're running a bit short of time. So if you allow me, talking about the survey reminds me we need to have a look at our poll survey of the last question, and then I'll come back to you to take your concluding note.
So I'm done.
So our poll question was, how resilient has been your organization through the pandemic? And 65% people are saying very resilient, operations working efficiently. That's very impressive. 30% are saying okay, coping fine. Only 1% saying not resilient at all. And 4% are saying it's too soon to say. And somehow I do agree with this because resilience is not something which is very short term. So I understand that we've been through the earlier stage, but then there's this phase, and then resilience is actually proved in the longer term. But it's good to see that 65% people are saying that their companies have been really resilient. Can we have the results of the next poll question, please? Okay, so yes, how well prepared was your company for the current pandemic? So 55% say well prepared, there were good contingency plans. That's really impressive. And 34% say that's a big percentage too. They say that some contingency plans in place, and 8% are saying that not at all. So they really need to do something about their business continuity and resilience, and take a leaf from what our learned speakers have talked to us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for participating in the polls. And it is often said that every crisis is also an opportunity. And an external shock like a pandemic can be a great opportunity for companies to rethink. And at the very end, I would first like to take a quick poll, and then I would ask each of my respected panelists to give their 2 cents very quickly, as we're running short of time. What are the opportunities that they see in the crisis? So the poll question is, what are the opportunities you see arising from this crisis? Is it virtual working? Definitely. It's changed the way we work. More agility. Companies have been working really fast. And if they keep this up, that is something which is really great. Then better appreciation of risk management and business continuity. This is something that we've been, all of us have been talking about. And faster adoption of digital solutions. For me, this was my first experience to do a webinar, and pardon if I looked a bit nervous in the beginning, but we're all learning with new digital solutions and virtual working, and hopefully we'll get better with this. So this is the last poll question of the day, ladies and gentlemen. What are the opportunities you see arising from this crisis? Because we want to finish this webinar on some positive notes.
Any particular order you want to go the answer, or?
Yes, so what I'll do is we can start from you, Dr. Liaqat. Let's just allow people to answer the question, and then yes, Dr. Liaqat, I'll come back to you. Sorry for the interruption. I was just being mindful of the time. So quickly, what are your two cents about the opportunities from this crisis?
I think the one of the things that happened is people now got more confidence, and some of the cultures, maybe Western culture was different, but here people working from home or remotely working was not that very common, and it seems more effective and efficient. Also, the people are going to look at the crisis management, business continuity plans, and risk and resilience. That it was hard for the practitioners to push through. People will not invest. People will not listen to it. I think the other things are more important. But I think over the next 5 to 10 years, this is going to be a quite focused area.
Thank you. Anna, what are your thoughts?
On my side, what I already share, number one is, of course, the position of the risk management function is something that it has been a great opportunity as well for not only the center team here in the headquarters, but also at each of the different operating units, and having that visibility and really start being considered a business partner. It has been, I think, definitely something that is an opportunity that we took. And the other one, if I may, that I see that is definitely a great opportunity is digital solutions. But it's not only about the teams, let's say, that obviously is important, but also to our customers. So if I may, for instance, from a telecom perspective, giving more solution to our customers and being able to, to utilize that is definitely an opportunity for the business that we have seen differently in the geographies where we operate.
Thanks, Anna. Rahat?
If I can widen the scope of opportunities, I think that the enormous amount of effort that's gone into trying to find a vaccine and solutions, medical solutions to this is phenomenal, the pace at which it's happening. And I just hope that this continues, and then after this, that the same level of attention is then given to other illnesses that have been insurmountable and impossible to find cures for. The other aspect this has brought about realization is in public health systems. Many around the world have been found wanting, and unfortunately, it's led to fatalities worldwide. I hope that this this scenario that we're going through focuses governments' attention on public health systems, and ensuring that these are adequate so that they're well prepared in the future. So.
Very true, Rahat. The way we're hearing that governments are collaborating when it comes to production of drugs for COVID-19, and I hope the sense of collaborative economies, it lasts post COVID-19 as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for signing in today, and I would like to conclude the seminar with some key takeaways, because I would definitely want to finish it with some positive points. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that in order to come back stronger, companies should reinvent their business models as they return to full speed. So those who step up their game will be better off and far more ready to confront the challenges and the opportunities of the next normal than those who do not. And Bain & Company have very well rightly called it as the CEO's dress rehearsal for the new world which is going to be more and more uncertain in future. And McKinsey & Company have described 5 qualities or critical steps that will be very important for business leaders to find their way to the next normal. And they call it resolve, resilience, return, reimagination and reform. During the current crisis, as we talk, businesses have worked faster and better than they dreamed possible just a few months ago. So if they can maintain that sense of agility, I think that will be a competitive advantage for such companies. And as we all talked about this, speakers talked about this, that companies now have a better appreciation of the importance and utility of organizational preparedness measures, because before that it was very difficult to actually make them understand, because such events have such a low likelihood that people do not take them that seriously. But what's important is they have a huge impact, and these black swan events can happen anytime, and one such black swan event is looking at us right in the face right now. So the crisis is also an opportunity to accelerate the adoption of digital solutions. And last but not the least, as everybody said, the haphazard response to COVID-19 of certain companies has demonstrated the value of ERM. And I would once again refer to the IRM survey. 94% people believe the case for risk management is strengthened by our pandemic experience. And previously, risk managers, I think the toughest challenge for risk managers was that they could not assign a tangible value to risk management. And I think this has actually proved, the pandemic experience has proved how important risk management is, and what better time to be qualified and to have your employees qualified in risk. And IRM's various qualifications can be pretty useful in this regard. So with this is your host, Sohab Mushtaq, signing off. Thank you very much for signing in. Thank you to my panelists, and I wish you a very happy Eid as well. And stay home, please stay home, stay safe, and take care. Bye-bye. Allah Hafiz.
Very much.
Thank you.